got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Trending Fantasy with Mitch and myself. I'm John. This week, we are going to be touching on the 2025 rookie picks, and it's an interesting discussion. It's a discussion that I pulled off of Reddit, like I said, each and every week, trending. What is a topic that is really being discussed? And it's not just, hey, these are rookies we like, these are rookies we dislike. I was really looking forward, Mitch, to this topic, and it's kind of an overarching discussion, but I think it's going to be extremely useful when we get into it, and discuss for our listeners here.
No, I love it. This is one to where I'm going to lead you down a different path than what you're expecting in about, I would say, 5 to 6 minutes. We're going to get to a slide. I'm going to have a little bit of pushback on some things on kind of how I'm seeing things, but it's all based off rookies and the talks that we have in Dynasty and how I think we could articulate them a little bit better.
I like that pushback.
A little bit.
Push. So like I said, getting into it here now for this discussion across the board, because we always like to set that expectation and that baseline for additional context. That's always my word, Mitch. For this discussion, assume 12-team superflex, start 10, typical lineup league. Let's say 1.75 PPR for tight ends, and then tight end across the board. PPR, there we go, across the board otherwise. First thing I want to talk about, what are you seeing in your leagues? Like, we're sitting here in March. Are there any trends that you're seeing? And there's some things that I pulled off of Dynasty Daddy that I think are going to be fairly eye-opening here, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
A big thing for me, so for anyone who doesn't know, I'm in about 50 Superflex Dynasty leagues. They're all lineup leagues. I don't believe I have seen the 101 moved in a single one of those leagues. I think I've seen the 102 moved maybe once, maybe twice. But every other pick to me seems very easily attainable. Like I see the 103 moved constantly, the 108, the 111, second round picks, I think are still pretty undervalued. I think it's very easy to get whatever pick you're looking at as far as like these tiers we'll be talking about throughout this episode, except for the 101 and the 102. I think those two are still going to be extremely hard to get.
So I want to share something very quickly and put this together right before the show. Warning, disclaimer, it's not pretty, but I think it gets the point across a little bit better. And, for the most part, obviously this is based on Dynasty Daddy going back to March 9th. There's a few filters applied, but overall, I think it kind of ties into what Mitch was saying. Obviously fairly anecdotal when we look at our specific leagues, but since March 9th, with a few filters applied, the 101, 224 trades, 102, 231, 103, 209, 104, 223. So fairly consistent. And, I don't want to jump the gun and get into the tier discussion quite yet, but that aligns fairly closely. You have the 101 break, and then 102 to 104. But then you see a nice little uptick when you get to 105 to 109. And then even more of an uptick when you get to that 110 to 202. And then comes down a little bit, 203 to 205, 206 to 212, bounces back up, 301 to 304, goes down fairly low. So like you're looking at it, and this is impromptu, I didn't tell you about this. What's your first thought whenever like you see that and you see those trends, and you already talked about what you're kind of seeing in your leagues?
Yeah, it's probably just the higher end assets are always harder to trade for. And the people who earn the 101, the 102, the 103, the 104, they don't really want to move off that in March. Why would you tank the whole year to get Ashton Genty and then be like, you know what? I really don't want to press that select button. I'm just going to move on at this point. So it probably takes a little bit of an overpay to get those picks. And so for me, I think that's probably why we see those ones just having a little bit less trade volume than the others.
I agree with that. And then when you get to the 105 to 109, I think you start to get a little bit less certainty when you're going to hit draft on a player, even less certainty when you get to 110 to 202, but still desirable assets that I think people are looking at. And people are talking about the depth of this class. And while that is true, I do think there's a drop off once we get almost, early-ish middle of the second round.
Yes.
And then you see that uptick at 206 to 212, because I think at that point, people are trying to move those picks, and then thirds, people aren't throwing them in as easily as they may have in the past, because maybe they don't see that huge gap between late seconds and early thirds. So that's kind of I just thought it was interesting. I pulled that right before this, but you can kind of really see that breakdown. And then if you're watching on YouTube, you got a glimpse of my notes poking out there. My prompts to Mitch here. But, when we look at this class, everybody wants to sit here and say, I like this class a lot. I don't like this class. But honestly, what does that mean? What does it mean? So as we sit here today, when we're evaluating this class, where are your tier breaks? We kind of talked about it a little bit with the trades we see on Dynasty Daddy, but how are you feeling today as we sit here on March 20th, the day of this release?
So this is the hard thing for me. I definitely believe in tier-based drafting. I think it makes a lot of sense. It gives you a good idea on hey, if I have the 106, I could look at these 4 players that I'm kind of looking at, and one of them should be there, more than likely. My kind of issue with the whole tier-based drafting approach is when we use it for tier-based values. I'm like, hey, so for anyone that knows, I have 4 tiers in the first round. The 101, Ashton Genty, right? The 102, Amari and Hampton. Those are 2 separate tiers. That's tier 1 and tier 2. Okay. Tier 3, I have the 103 to the 107 because you could get the tight ends, your QB1, and the wide receiver 1 there. I think that's very fair in this kind of league settings.
For additional context, I know we're saying 1.75 PPR, but let's say, because there's a lot of people that play in leagues that don't have a tight end premium, how does that 103 to 107 tier change for you?
It just moves some other guys up. So I think it's kind of the same tier, to be honest, but it just drops the tight ends to a different tier. But it would raise up a Henderson that I have in tier 4 from the 108 to the 111. He would immediately move up. Jackson Dart, as of right now, would probably move up. Matthew Golden would have a good chance. So like I said, I have 4 tiers there. And kind of what my issue runs into is we just did the trade show on Dynasty Theory on Monday night. It was live. Check it out. We put grades to 9 different trades. But the hard thing is, so in my mind, I know if I have the 103 to the 107, I'm really happy with any player I get there. That tier is the same for me. I don't give those picks different values. But now if someone were to come into the comments on this show and be like, hey, I have the 107. What are you asking to... What are you willing to give up to move up to the 103, right? When you're actually giving advice on those tiers, I can't be like, hey, if you have the 103, drop to the 107, just ask for a third because there's really no difference, right? So there's the dynasty market involved, and so I think that's the really hard thing when you're talking about rookie tiers is I could give you, hey, I love these 5 guys between the 103 and the 107. And to me, they're all pretty close to the same value. That's why they're in the same tier. But you can't set the same value to those picks because obviously the 103 is worth a lot more than the 107 is.
Yeah. And that talked about it on Monday when we were evaluating the trades. We talk about it each and every single week on Dynasty Theory and Trending Fantasy. We all have our own values and your league has specific values, but there is that broader market that we're not just going to ignore. Like on my cross positional tiers, just because I have, let's see here, Tony Pollard and Tyron Tracy valued very similarly in the same tier, you're able to get something with Tony Pollard. Yes. So you don't just trade to trade. There needs to be a reason behind it. So if you have the 103 and you're looking to move back to the back end of the tier. And that kind of goes into a later conversation, but it all really blends together to the larger piece here. But you can't be leaving value on the table when clearly there is a value difference. For me, I have the 101. I have the 102 to the 104 together, and that's going to, I know. And that's going to be your pick of the litter between the quarterback one, the wide receiver one, which I know there's been a lot of conversation lately on Tet McMillan. Can he really be a team's alpha wide receiver one? I mean, he doesn't necessarily need to be, though, to return value, even at the 104. And then obviously Amari and Hampton. And then I have 105 to 111. And that's one of our big things, because there was a trade on Monday where it involved the 109 and the 111. And you were like, I have I want that swap. And I was like, I don't really value them all that differently. And I saw you furrow your brow, and I was expecting that
a little bit.
Now in non-tight end premium, that goes 105 to 109. So it gets a little bit closer to where
we're pretty close there. Yeah.
And then I have 112 to 204, and then 205, 206, and then it kind of starts breaking.
You said the 111 to the 204. I'm pretty close. I got the 112 to
204 if I did say 111.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm extremely close there. Do you have players in there?
I have my tiers up here.
Who are your players between the 112 and the 204? I want to know if they're the same ones that I have.
Like the one wild card here, because we think he's going to go in the back.
I have him in that same tier.
Draft. Jackson Dart. I don't think he's a great quarterback.
I have him above that, to be honest.
Okay,
I thought you were going to say Travis Hunter, to be honest.
I have Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Travis Hunter. That's my tier right there.
Oh, wow. No, we aren't close. I have Ibuka in that tier. I have Judkins.
I have Ibuka above.
I have Hunter, and then Mason Taylor.
I have Taylor one below. Yeah. Now, but that's what makes this draft so fun. And I think we talk about it every year. It's like the variance league to league, it's really going to be noticeable. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I think this year it really is.
Yep.
Especially when you incorporate Superflex, you incorporate tight end premium. So that's just some additional context there in those league settings where our current tier breaks are. But again, this episode is coming out on March 20th. We have 5 weeks until the NFL draft. It's going to be smokescreen season. It's going to be lying season. There's going to be value shifts. We might see some trades here eventually in the NFL. But I think when you go through these situations, you talk about the tiers, you talk about the value difference, not leaving value on the table. I think this allows us to, hopefully successfully maneuver around rookie drafts in a way that makes sense for our teams and from a value perspective. So we're talking about our tiers. At what point are you interested to trade into this draft? So you don't have a pick. Let's say you cleaned out the cupboard. You have no picks. What range of picks do you think gives you the best bang for your buck when comparing the cost to acquire and then the believed talent and or production from the get-go here?
Yeah, I would love to say the top 5. It's going to be really hard to do. But I think that tier between the 108 and the 203, you're going to get a very good running back. More than likely, one of the tight ends is going to drop there. And then you could still, knowing how Tet is talked about on X, there's a chance to where he could drop that far. Or maybe what everyone is calling, as far as NFL-wise, the real wide receiver one, the class, Matthew Golden. I think there's like an 85% chance he's going to be there. So I think after about that 107, if you trade in from the 108 to the early second, I think you're still going to get a very good player with the chance to be elite with a tight end or a running back. These wide receivers, are they going to be elite? I don't know right now. Is one going to end up probably being very good in the NFL? Yes. Can I put, hey, is it going to be Travis Hunter? I don't know. But I think buying in at that price point is very, very smart because you're getting a good player. And I don't think you're having to pay that much this year to get into that spot compared to in 2024.
We are seeing eye to eye on this one here. Yes, the overall range is a little bit different, but pulling up Fantasy Calc here, and again, it's just a quick frame of reference, but this is looking at 12-team PPR Superflex. You have 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, and then it starts to break a little bit between the 105 and 106. You see the point differentials there. And if, like I said, I have 105 to 111.
Big tier.
It is a big tier, but part of that is because you mentioned there's a chance that some players slip.
Yes.
Like there's a very real chance in our rookie drafts, Ted McMillan goes wide receiver 3, I think, because Matthew Golden and then Travis Hunter. I don't blame anybody for wanting Travis Hunter. I get it, man. I really get it. But like you look at it and they have a 20% difference between 107 and 111. That's where the true opportunity for me is. I think it's moving into the later half of that tier. You said what? 108 to
203-ish, 202. Yeah.
I mean, it very similar size range, just shifted a little bit. But I think there are people that would be looking to move those picks for more production because theoretically, if they have their own picks still, maybe they're a team looking to continue their path to contention. And I actually received a trade offer an hour ago for my 111 in the league. I rejected it. And they replied right away and said, I'm interested in your 111. I have other players that I'm willing to. Buddy, I'm also trying to buy into that range.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So I thought it tied in very nicely with the offer there that I just got. Anything stand out to you in the second round, like where you'd be looking to buy in, or is it just get me in the top 15 picks?
Yeah, that'll kind of lead to the next graphic you have. But for me, I'm not moving out of the first round unless you give me a very good player that I have a lot of faith in, right? I really like this first round. I really like the beginning of the second round, but we're talking about this 5 weeks before the NFL draft. Right now, in the tier that I have after the 203, that's where I have Burden, Io Manor, Noel, Higgins, Harris. I mean, I have a lot of players there. And so if any of those guys goes to a good landing spot, then all of a sudden it's like, no, it's the mid-second round or it's the 208 the second round. But right now, without having that landing spot, I do put a higher premium on like Egbuka than I do on Burden, even though I love Burden. I mean, we talked about Burden from 2 months ago on this same channel. But the problem is the NFL doesn't seem to love him as much as what we do from everything we're seeing right now. And if that's the case, we have to drop him down in our tiers. And that would mean if I was going into a draft today, I would take Egbuka over Burden every single time because I think that's how the NFL draft is going to see him. Now, in 5 weeks, if Burden ends up getting a really good landing spot and Egbuka doesn't, that stuff's all going to change. But as of right now, it's about that midpoint in the second round. I'm more than happy to trade out of that for a vet, more so than I'm willing to move out of the first or, early second to go and get who's a Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, that type. I love those guys, but I still really love the young players coming in the first round.
I want to move up from around the 205 tier and beyond. I want to move up there. I want to move back like within my tiers if I can move from that 102 to 104, but get market value because there is a very quarterback needy team that has their eyes on Cam Ward. There's a team that just always drafts wide receivers and they want to move up for Tet. They love Amari and Hampton, but doing that, sliding back to the end of a tier, and even if you're picking up the additional value, you need to be willing to take whoever falls. So we can say we have a tier of 102 to 104, and I said this before, but across all of my leagues, if I'm given the choice between 3 players, but every time I pick that one player, do you really have them tiered together?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Scott and I often talk about portfolio, and you are like, I don't play portfolio style, even though I have a larger number of leagues. But if you're in just a few leagues, you might want to get that guy. So you don't want to just get a little bit of value to move back. But my point there is I'm looking to move back from the 102 to the 104. I'm looking to move back from the 105, 106 to 108, 109, 110, 111. I think you can also pick up some veterans. You can get additional picks, preferably in future classes. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. But like if we're talking about where we want to get into, it's ideally, and forget about where I say I have my tiers, where Mitch says it. I'm sure a lot of our listeners, they have their rankings, they have their tiers. We have very smart listeners. And if they're going in and they're like, oh, my tier is completely different, it still can be valuable. Just look within your tier and, look within your heart and make that decision that, okay, I can move to the back of the tier and pick up value and still get a player that I have clumped together.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
So that was trading up, trading down, trading out. If you already have a pick at the back end of a tier, I'm willing to trade back even more. So like go down a tier, but the value needs to make sense. Again, it's not a move just to make a move. I am less willing to move out of the back end of a tier than I am the beginning of a tier. So not just moving back to move back. And then from the 205 and on, I think that's when I really start to look at future draft capital.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. So here's my thing about the future draft capital, right? We're talking about, let's say, a 26 second. I personally don't believe the 26 draft is any better than the 25 draft. I think it honestly might be worse than the 25 draft skill position wise.
Here's the thing though. I agree with you at this point. Again, we're talking about being 5 weeks out from the NFL draft in 2025. We're 57 weeks out from the 26 NFL draft, but it gives you that asset throughout the season that you can utilize.
You can, but at the same time, you could also have a rookie that you could utilize that could be better than what that pick is.
But again, this can shift in your tiers depending on how you have it. Like I have a pretty clear difference between 112 to 204 and 205 to 206. And then certainly once you get to 207, I have a lot less confidence. So if for my 206, if I could get 226 seconds, I think that's a deal that could get done.
Yeah, I think you do that almost every year. But let's say
I'm not saying a straight swap.
Yeah, let's say 26 first. What pick are you going to move for a 26 first? Random 26 first, right? Just say you don't really have an idea. It's a middle of the pack team. It could be early, could be late, could be mid. What 25 pick are you willing to move for that?
112.
I have the 111 written down. But yeah, I mean, more than likely, I'm making that pick this year, though, because I still like it. And I mean, we're crushing the quarterbacks in this year's class. Like, unless Archie Manning comes out next year. And the only reason why we care about Archie Manning at this point is because his name is Archie Manning. If you did not know who it was, it'd be like, hey, we have this backup starter that's going to be going for Texas this year. We think it could be good. But since it's Archie, it's like, no, he could be the 101 in Superflex drafts. You take that name off. Tell me a quarterback you really love next year. Like,
listen, we got this quarterback, Archie Sorensen.
Exactly.
He's going to be
just doesn't hit the same. Yep.
But yeah, so 111, 112. And again, that's with the settings that we discussed at the top of the show. 1.75 PPR for tight ends. That would, again, shift up probably 109 in non-premium. But I thought about this because, when you're looking at the 25 picks versus 26 or 27, I think a lot of folks right now, especially when it comes to first round picks, are going to value 27 and 26 very close together because of the hype around those wide receivers right
Yes,
now,
no,
those
I
very early
completely
wide
agree.
receivers in 27. And it gives you more time for more variance. And what I mean by that, if Mitch has a strong team and he offers me his 26 first, but it's an aging team, I might accept the trade, but say, give me your 27 instead.
Yeah. Give me the
There's
27 and throw a fourth on there. Throw something just so, because you don't want people to know that you're willing to take that 27 first, the same as the 26. You're like, hey, throw on that third round pick in the 26. And they'll be like, oh, okay. 2 years out, I can make it that trade. Offer that to Dan, our favorite co-host on Dynasty Theory. Dude's accepting it for 27 first. We know this. He talked about it 2 or 3 weeks ago on it.
But yeah, there's more room for error. There's more time for things to go wrong on Mitch's team. And I think between the strength of the class right now, again, that works for the 27 first because you have a chance to get those early first. But like, let's say a team, Mitch has a very strong team. He offers me his 26 first. That's going to be very different than if I know somebody in my league is a terrible manager. I know the way they draft. I know like their team is horrible. They burn through assets. They don't have a lot of high-end assets if they were looking to tear down and really build up the rest of their roster. I think that, like, if I have a very good feeling, like that could be a top 3 pick, like a very good feeling, 75% plus, not on the playoff bubble. Yep. But if I have a really good feeling that could be an early 26 first, and maybe somebody else has it, so they're a little more willing to part with it. 26 first, 26 second in a small piece for, you're going to say you're going to hate it, but maybe as early as 105.
And in this tight end premium, I can't do it, to be honest, because I believe Loveland and Warren are that good. And I think you could have a strong chance of getting the pick of who you want at that 105. And so if we didn't have the tight
100%.
ends, I would completely agree that, like, hey, that's a move I'm making 80% of the time.
Oh, so you are the 103 to 107 tier. So
yes,
if I said there's a 75% chance this pick is top 3 next year, and I'll throw in a second with it as well.
Then I would take it. Yeah, I would take that deal. I would probably go the 107, like what you were mentioning. But you would have to be, why is someone moving that pick? I mean, we do know there's managers out there. I had a guy in one of my leagues who flat out ruined multiple leagues because he would just trade his picks and he was terrible, and trying to replace those rosters 3 years afterwards is nearly impossible. So there are managers like that out there, without a doubt, and attack them if you can. I mean, there's no reason not to. Someone else in your league is going to take advantage of that if you don't.
And again, though, like for the most part, most teams, you're like, especially in a 12 team, there is a lot more parity and randomness than in a 14 or 16 team league, because in those leagues you typically really have the haves and have-nots.
Yes.
In a 12 team league where 6 teams make the playoffs, there's a lot of teams, like maybe 10 teams, that are realistically fighting for those playoff spots. So again, in that situation, I'm saying be very, very certain that pick would land early. I don't want anybody to walk away from this conversation and think, hey, John Bauer said, move that 105
for 105 for 27 first.
Because if you remember a few years ago, that was a huge conversation everywhere. What pick for a random future pick? But the expectation was the current class was weak, the next class was strong. People were talking about like 104, 105, if you remember.
Yes, I do remember.
Straight up for
it was the 23 draft going into 24. Yep.
And people were looking to make that move. Or was it 22 into 23?
It could have been 22 to 23. It was a few years ago. I know that.
I think it was 22 to 23. But you need to be very certain there, and read the league, read the room.
Yes.
And I think you could obviously reap the benefits and take advantage there if the situation calls for it. Like I said, you remember a couple of years ago, everybody was just saying move that pick for the future first. But this year, like I think people are going to start to really buy into those late first more and more.
I think so. Once we get landing spots, the skill position talent is good enough. Well, really, the running back positions are good enough. What happens if Quinshon Judkins goes to the Bears in the second round? He's a top 5 pick. And then it moves everybody else down. So then all of a sudden, Loveland's the 107. You're going to get
we're going to have 10,
probably at the 110. Yeah.
We're going to have 10 top 5 picks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. If we get good landing spots with these running backs, there's going to be 8 guys that people want in the first 5 picks.
And as we talked about it before, and I'm really upset with myself, I didn't mention it, but when we were talking about the tiers and getting into the second round, everybody says like, oh, I love second round picks. The depth is great. Scott's putting out part 2 of his war discussion on Sunday. And last week, if you watched it on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel, make sure you do. Make sure you like that video, subscribe to the channel, like our video while you're here. But last week, he talked about actual NFL draft picks. This Sunday, he's going to be focusing on the war associated with rookie draft picks in your dynasty leagues. And I think a lot of it's going to tie in closely to kind of the discussions we had here, where we're looking to move up, where we're looking to move back or move out. But when you get to the mid-second, yeah, like there's a lot of guys we like now, but draft capital is going to nuke some of them. Landing spots going to nuke some of them. So I think we're going to start to get more and more separation between those late firsts and maybe early seconds or early seconds and mid seconds, but there's going to be more of a difference there, in my opinion. Mitch, anything else on the 25 picks to wrap this up?
The only thing I'm going to say is, I try to repeat this. Last year was the year to fix your quarterbacks and your wide receivers room. We knew that going in. This is the year to fix your tight end running back room. Like, really is. If you have great running backs, might be a good year to move out and get future assets. If you're lacking in the tight end room or in the running back room, you should be trading into this draft, because next year, like, Nick Singleton's probably going to be a first round super flex pick. I don't know if he'd be the 109, 110 right now in a lot of people's rankings.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure. I do think there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of moves that could be made, and hopefully we spark some ideas. Again, I always say, I don't care if you disagree with us, but hopefully something we said stands out to you and it sparks an idea for you in one of your leagues. Hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I say it every single episode on Dynasty Theory or Trending Fantasy. There's almost a new episode every single day, whether it's a mock draft, whether it's the All Gas Trade Show, whether it's Manic and Chill, whatever the case may be, something brand new almost every day. For Mitch Sorensen, I'm John Bauer. We'll catch everybody next week. Keep trending.